subject today is the power of imagination. Imagination is not a strange or an unfamiliar word for us. It's not a technical, philosophical word. It's something we use often and in a great variety of situations. It is a technique for bridging the gap between where we are and where we want to be. Many of us use it quite routinely. Athletes and artists use it when they want to envision their performance as they would like it to be. Scientists use it when they want to pursue ideas beyond the limits of reason and evidence. And spiritual aspirants use it to transform their very being. The root of this word, imagination, is image. And this relates to sight or vision. Amongst the senses, sight holds a dominant position. As we move along the evolutionary ladder towards the human being, we find that the visual apparatus is becoming gradually more sophisticated. For example, we have stereoscopic vision. That's only possible because our eyes are in the front of our face. If they had been on either side of our face, as some animals have, there's no question of having stereoscopic vision. Now, for the eyes to move forward, the snout, as it were, had to withdraw. The nose had to become smaller. So a lot of evolutionary process had to take place before even physically the arrangement of our visual apparatus became possible. Along the ladder, one also finds the development of color recognition. Not all animals can recognize color, but human beings have color vision. But even more impressive beyond these developments is in human beings, there is an ability to discern fine detail. It's actually quite amazing, given that in terms of the amount of information that we have to process visually, our apparatus, sophisticated as it is still fairly coarse. And yet, we're able to discern detail using that coarse equipment. And this last development is especially important for the subject of today's discussion. You might imagine that the reason we're able to see detail is because unknowns to us there is some sophistication in the development of our visual apparatus. But in fact, it's something else. It has nothing to do with the visual apparatus at all. It has everything to do with the mind. A new interpretive element has been introduced. And to understand this, we have to reflect a little bit on how we see. How is an image formed? If you had asked this question to scientists of the post-industrial revolution, they would have said, well, in your eye, there's a lens. Light from an object is going through that lens, and inside somewhere, an inverted image is formed, and you recognize that image, and that process is called seeing. But actually now our understanding of both physiology of the eye as well as neuroscience suggests that something much more complicated is happening. The eye contains more than 1 billion or so tiny detectors of light. They're called rods and cones. And when light strikes these rods and cones, they send a message to the brain. What kind of message do they send? They have no knowledge of what it is they're seeing. They send a message that I have been hit by a photon, by a particle of light. So the message, every time we try to see, the brain gets a barrage of millions of signals from the different rods and cones saying they have been struck by a photon of light. So the brain gets this. And from here, the brain is expected to make a meaningful image. So this process of seeing more closely resembles what happens in your television screen or on a computer screen than a camera. But the point being made here is that in addition, the eye is wired, so to speak, to look for some other information which the brain needs. The eye looks for boundaries and straight edges, among other things. And the brain uses this information to enhance the picture, the coarse picture that it is able to assemble from the information provided by the rods and cones. In other words, the brain is fixing up the picture, the coarse picture that is physically presented to it. This is therefore an interpretive factor which is built into the process of vision itself. So when we speak about the subjective nature of perception, it has a physiological basis. Vision plays such an important role in the way we acquire and process knowledge. You have all heard the expression, a picture is worth 1,000 words. It shows how much information can be conveyed by one visual image. But the word vision has grown in meaning beyond that of physical sight. We speak of a person with vision as one who's able to see through time or in some other abstract domain. You know, in the Katha Upanishad, there's a verse which speaks of a heroic person who, desiring the changeless, turned his vision inward and perceived the inner being. Kaschit dhiraha pratyagatmanam aikshat avritta chakshuru amritatvamichan. Here, the word vision does not refer to seeing in the usual sense, but in some more abstract sense. And thus, image and vision, which we started off discussing as physical things, lead to imagination and visionary. Starting from something physical, we have suddenly stepped into a world with infinite possibilities that transcends and leaves far behind the more mundane world of the limited and the sensate. Imagination is the ability to make meaningful images, and more importantly, to extrapolate from existing ones. As human beings, we seem to be born with this ability, though it may be more developed or less developed in a particular individual. The ability to imagine is an essential component in our freedom to choose one of several alternatives in action. As we grow up, our imagination, our faculty of imagination also develops, and it is largely affected by our mental conditioning and identifications. It is also intertwined with the subjective nature of perception. And the two together have enormous consequences for our interpersonal relationships and the way we conduct our lives. Sometimes our imagination can create facts. For example, people who hear ghost stories may find their minds projecting ghosts and ghostly behavior into their environment. And they may even find evidence to support this. They have an uneasy feeling as soon as they are alone. Your imagination. Perhaps those of us who hear or read or watch the daily news are apprehensive about the motives of every stranger we see on the road. In other words, we manufacture facts by imagination. Imagination is also useful in memory. It can help us to remember things. Dale Carnegie, who is well known as an author and lecturer, describes a curious but effective memory system using imagination. Suppose you're listening to a lecture and you wanted to remember the points. Not only do you want to remember the points, but say you want to remember them in a specific order. First point, second point, third point. So what he says is, he advises us to replace each numeral with a word that rhymes with it and corresponds to some picture, an image. For example, he associates one with sun. They sound the same, but sun is a visual image. 2 with zoo. Again, it's a visual image. 2 is a number, but zoo is a visual image. 3 with tree, and so on. You can make up your own after that. Then, encapsulating the first point you want to remember in a picture, you superimpose it on the sun. So later on, it's strange, but the mind seems to be able to hold on to these images. So later on, when you want to recollect what was the first point, you think of the sun, and with the sun will also come the image that you had superimposed on it. It's an interesting experiment. You can try it. It does work. So by using your imagination, you can construct images that are striking and therefore easy to remember. Sometimes our imagination causes us to give completely unintended meaning to words. There is the following story I heard once from Swami Adishwarananda. Once a man was driving a truckload of penguins. These were to be delivered to the zoo. On the way, he experienced mechanical difficulties. The truck broke down, so he had to pull over. He was trying to fix it. Now, of course, penguins being penguins, they were getting restless while he was trying to fix the truck. He started shaking the truck, and he was in a spot. He didn't know what to do. But at that time, another truck, which was empty, was passing by. Realizing that this man was in difficulty, the driver stopped, pulled over, and inquired, "Anything I can do for you? Can I help you?" He said, "Yes, in fact you can. I was taking these penguins to the zoo. If you can take them for me, it would really be helpful. Then I can get my truck fixed." Second man said, "Sure, no problem." He loaded the penguins into his truck, and he went off. And the first man eventually got his truck to a garage and got it fixed. The next day, he was driving along. He happened to stop on the highway at a diner. And he went in, he was shocked. When he went in, he saw all the penguins were in the diner. They were sitting at tables, sipping coffee. First man got very annoyed. He said, "What are these penguins doing here?" So he looked around and he found the other man that he had entrusted the responsibility of taking the penguins to the zoo. He went up to him and said, "Didn't I ask you to take these penguins to the zoo?" The second man was puzzled. "Why are you angry?" "Yes, I did take them to the zoo. Tonight I'll take them to the opera. Tomorrow we will go to the museum. I'm taking care of them for you." It's an example of imagination giving an unintended meaning to the words. Our imagination can also change the dimension of words, that is, magnify out of proportion the significance of words. It can make mountains out of molehills. You know, this is a common experience. We're so affected by the words of others. A mild rebuke may become a major mental storm. As Swami Vivekananda says, a little stone hurts us. A little anger from a little jack wounds us. Any fool on the street can make these gods miserable. This is just common experience. All rooted in imagination. Imagination can also be communicable. An essential part of art is the communication of imagination. We may think that the word imagination has a connotation of the unreal, but in fact, it is imagination that helps us to call into question the nature of reality. Imagination offers us a possibility of transcending conventional wisdom, of overcoming artificial limitations that we have allowed to be placed on our understanding. Regarding this idea of being able to communicate truth by challenging conventional wisdom, there is the following incident that occurred at a class at Billermut that Swami Vivekananda was giving. In speaking about Brahman, he suddenly said, "Here is the unveiled presence of Brahman. Fie upon those who, disregarding it, set their mind on other things. Here is Brahman, as palpable as a fruit in one's palm. Don't you see it?" He said those words with such emphasis that everyone present was transfixed, as if they were actually experiencing a transcendental presence. Swami Tulyananda, I think, reports that he happened to be passing by at that time, and he also couldn't move when he heard these words. It took some minutes before people returned to their normal awareness. But this is an example of how a higher vision can be communicated, and the instrument is imagination. Our conscience can also express itself through the faculty of imagination. Once somebody stole a pumpkin from a garden, and to steal it, he took the pumpkin, put it on his shoulder, and walked away. He was feeling a little guilty about it. The owner of the garden wanted to know who stole the pumpkin. So he called all the workers, the gardeners, and said, demanded to know who did it. The guilty man, others were guilty, but the guilty man started dusting off his shoulders and says, "Why are you looking at me?" In fact, he wasn't looking at him. and there was nothing on his shoulders. But it's just the way conscience made him imagine that there was some incriminating evidence on his shoulders. In fact, there was none. There's an interesting book, The Psychopathology of Everyday Life, by Sigmund Freud. It gives many examples of how conscience works through the imagination and through suggestion. The great dramatists have also understood this psychological fact. In Hamlet, we find King Claudius, Shakespeare's character, wondering whether there is rain enough in the heavens to wash his blood-stained hand as white as snow. In fact, there was no stain on the hand, it was in his mind. All of these are examples of the principle that what we perceive is but a reflection of ourselves. We see the world not as it is, but as we imagine it to be. And we imagine it to be as we are. This is the subjective nature of perception. Vivekananda gives the following example. Suppose there is a baby here, and you place a bag of gold on the table. Suppose a robber comes and takes the gold away. To the baby, it is all the same, because there is no robber inside, there is no robber outside. To sinners and wild men, there is wildness outside, but not to good men. So the wicked see this universe as a hell. The partially good see it as heaven, while the perfect beings realize it as God Himself. This is Swami Vivekananda. The principle that what we see outside is but a reflection of what is inside has many important consequences. If we see good qualities such as holiness, unselfishness, purity in someone, then that should be very encouraging for us, because it means that those qualities must be within us also. Possibly in seed form, but they're there. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to perceive them in others. This is therefore extremely encouraging, especially for devotees. I remember many years ago, Swami Shraddhananda was visiting, and he gave a talk. Sometimes these words really stick in one's mind. He started his talk looking at the devotees, saying, "You are all holy people. Swamis need the holy company of devotees as much as devotees need the holy company of sadhus." Very encouraging statement. But now also, in this context, we understand the advice, the very famous advice that is often quoted from the Holy Mother about not finding fault with others. Some wonder aloud if this advice of to not find fault with others would not constitute naivety or ignorance on our part. It's important to understand it because it refers to a situation that we face daily in life. Not finding fault doesn't mean being blind to what is going on in front of us. Rather, it means to refrain from labeling people. We have an unfortunate tendency to label people by their actions. Labeling somebody is unwise for several reasons. Firstly, and the chief one, is that you might be completely wrong. But secondly, the human being is not a static entity, it's a dynamic and changing entity, constantly changing and learning. A person may have committed a mistake, but that may not be his nature, and it is unfair to condemn him for that one action. And thirdly, even if we are right, and even if it is his nature, what will we gain by labeling the person? Whom does it help? Rather, the Holy Mother says that we only injure ourselves because we bring to the forefront of our awareness the same fault and thereby emphasize it. She advises us instead to try and see the good qualities of people, because that will bring out our good qualities. Try to remember even one good quality of that person. By doing this, we develop respect for the person, and we will be in a much better position to render assistance if it is needed. It is impossible to interact properly with someone whom we do not respect. When we respect a person, we're also able to appreciate or even understand that person's ideals and motivations. Swami Vivekananda says, in our dealings with our fellow human beings, we constantly labor under this mistake. And I am of opinion that the vast majority of our quarrels with one another arise simply from this one cause, that we are always trying to judge others as gods by our own, others' ideals by our ideals, others' motives by our motives. Under certain circumstances, I may do a certain thing. And when I see another person taking the same course, I think he has also the same motive actuating me. Little dreaming that although the effect may be the same, yet many other causes may produce the same thing. So by developing respect for others, we develop also an understanding of others. But even more importantly, and perhaps at first surprisingly, we develop self-respect and faith in ourselves. A person who has faith in himself or herself has a lot of faith in others. The two things seem to go together. The importance of this has been emphasized by many teachers, and we discussed this last week also. Swami Vivekananda says, the ideal of faith in ourselves is of the greatest help to us. If faith in ourselves had been more extensively taught and practiced, I am sure a very large portion of the evils and miseries that we have would have vanished. And Sri Ramakrishna said, bondage is of the mind, freedom is also of the mind. A man is free if he constantly thinks, I am a free soul. How can I be bound? Whether I live in the world or in the forest. I am a child of God, the King of Kings. Who can bind me? The wretch who constantly says, I am bound, only succeeds in being bound. He who says day and night, I am a sinner, rarely becomes a sinner. So now we see that the way we understand the world, the way we understand each other, the way we understand ourselves, the way we interpret God, depends completely on the concepts or paradigms that we carry within us, the way we imagine things to be. Often we want to change the way things are, and we make vigorous efforts in this direction, and yet we find these efforts fall short of the goal. The problem is usually that we've not pinpointed the difficulty, and so we end up addressing the wrong issue. For example, most of us want to get along with people. We want to avoid conflict. And so, we may work on our attitude or our behavior towards others. We may try to be nice. We may try to be on our best behavior, friendly and cooperative. And still, mysteriously at first, we may fail to produce the right effect. The reason may be an underlying negative paradigm, such as our view that such and such a person is lazy, or such and such a person doesn't care, or such and such people are untrustworthy. Holding these ideas in mind, no amount of trying to be nice will produce much effect. If we believe that we only communicate through our words, then we're laboring under a misapprehension. What we are speaks more loudly than what we say or do. There's a popular book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Many of you have gone through it. It's very light reading. But it gives the following interesting example. Suppose you're trying to reach a specific location in central Chicago. You're given a map, but unknown to you, it is in fact a map of Detroit. In a very short time, you'll be quite lost. And at that point, you may try to work on your attitude. You tell yourself, let's be calm, let's be optimistic, I will reach the goal, I'll reach my destination. You could try to work on your behavior. Try harder, be more focused, be more diligent. And you'll still be lost. The problem here is not your attitude or behavior. The problem is you have the wrong map. To try to change our attitude and behavior does very little good in the long run if we fail to examine the basic assumptions, the basic paradigms from which these attitudes and behaviors flow. On the other hand, once we have the right paradigm, our attitude and behavior can and they will make a big difference. If we want to make a difference in any situation, we have to introspect and examine our paradigms, our mental maps, and see if they are consistent with our ideals, with what we are, what we stand for, or what we want to stand for. Swami Vivekananda labels this process as man-making. Now, man-making, as some may think, is not bodybuilding. It means character building. It refers to the building up of the inner being so that our mental maps, our mental paradigms are consistent with our ideals. And of course, he connects this to education, which is the topic we discussed last week. He says, the ideal of all education, all training, should be this man-making. But instead of that, we're always trying to polish up the outside. What use in polishing up the outside when there is no inside? The end and aim of all training is to make the man grow. The man who influences, who throws his magic, as it were, upon his fellow beings, is a dynamo of power. And when that man is ready, he can do anything and everything he likes. That personality put upon anything will make it work. Next we come to the role of imagination in the creative process. The artist and sculptor, Michelangelo, said he could imagine the finished sculpture in a block of stone. It's a famous statement. Holding fast to that vision, he would then remove all that was not part of the figure until the completed figure stood revealed. Thus he connected two apparently disconnected things: the finished image and the stone. And if he were to explain to someone, not similarly tuned, that this slab of marble contains the figure of David, they would simply not understand and they might even ridicule him. But all imagination is of this nature. It is the discovery of similarities where apparently there were none. As explained by Bronowski, the act of imagination is the opening of the system so that it shows new connections. All those who imagine take parts of the universe which have not been connected hitherto and enlarge the total connectivity of the universe by showing them to be connected. Everyone is familiar with the story of how Newton began to think about gravitation. Whether it's true or not, actually I don't know, but anyway, we're familiar with the story. The fact is, there is some attractive force in the earth. That much is obvious even to a baby. The apple falling on his head itself was therefore not the catalytic agent that nudged Newton to think there was a describable law of gravitation. Rather, it was what he saw when he lifted his head to see where the apple fell from. Sitting under a tree, the apple fell from the tree, but he looked up to see where it fell from, and what did he see? He saw that in the sky there was the moon. He saw the moon and he asked the question, why did the apple fall but the moon didn't fall? Why does the moon not fall down? This was a leap of imagination, you see, to go from the apple to the moon. But because of that, he realized that there must be a force which has a specific strength and which you can calibrate. There are many stories of this kind. Ptolemy was trying to understand the movements of the planets
This was at a time when there was still the idea that the Earth was the center of the solar system. But there was the Greeks had this idea of natural beauty, and also after Plato there was the preeminence of geometry. Everything had to be geometric to be true. So this led Ptolemy to believe that the orbits could be described in terms of the Platonic solids. This was an attempt to find a connection between what were believed to be fundamental and universal geometric constructs with the observed facts of nature. Now we know it didn't work. It was a wrong model. It was a wrong model because the Earth is not the center of the solar system. But nevertheless, we can't discard the attempt as useless. The freedom to make what normally would be called an error is crucial to the imaginative and creative process. In fact, Swami Sarvadhananda once told us his definition of intelligence. It is the freedom to make a mistake. Indeed, it is true. Swami Vivekananda says something similar. Let us think something new, even if it be wrong. It is better to do that because we become wiser through failures. Not that to go out looking for failure. We try to solve a problem, but we need not be afraid at the outset of failing. It isn't the very nature of looking for similarities that most of the time the similarity isn't there. Nevertheless, we make the search. Moreover, our experience suggests that even when an error is discovered, we cannot emphatically say that the point of view that led to it should be wholly discarded. One of the great impediments to creativity is the restraining voice of knowledge and reason. We circumscribe our circle of possibilities when we allow these two to dominate us. Prematurely invoked, the voice of knowledge may try to tell us why our idea could not possibly work, and thus squelch our enthusiasm. It's interesting, this is a radically different point of view than, let's say, Plato's point of view, where he would say that knowledge and reason are paramount. This point of view says that no, they're not paramount, but then there's a scope for something else, namely imagination. Knowledge and reason have a role, a very important role to play in the creative process. But if imagination gives the concept, knowledge goes to work to produce the blueprints for actuating the concept. But there is a stage in the creative process when we must give ourselves the freedom to dream. You know how Einstein would carry out his thought experiments. It was also a famous story. He would be traveling on the streetcar from his home to his office. He used to work as a clerk in the patent office. And while traveling in the streetcar, many people traveled on that streetcar. They didn't become Einstein. But he would ask, what if the streetcar would do this, so that he'd carry on thought experiments? Imagination. He'd say, what if the streetcar were to travel at the speed of light? What if I replace the streetcar with light? Suppose I'm traveling on a beam of light. What would the world look like to me? So he asked this kind of question. What would one see? What would the clock appear as? What would people look like? And so on. He explored the world he would see through his thought experiments. Imagination also plays an important part in mathematics, and you might think that's one field that it wouldn't touch, because at least what the public sees is this absolute edifice of logic and rigor. Harish Chandra, who until his death in 1983 was professor of mathematics at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, spoke about the role of imagination in the following words. And this is actually very striking, because if one ever tries to read his published works, they are impenetrable. They're very difficult to follow his works. But then here is what he says privately. I have often pondered over the roles of knowledge or experience on the one hand, and imagination or intuition on the other, in the process of discovery. I believe there is a certain fundamental conflict between the two. And knowledge, by advocating caution, tends to inhibit the flight of imagination. Therefore, a certain naivety, unburdened by conventional wisdom, can sometimes be a positive asset. So intelligence, imagination, and creativity are all tied up with this freedom to experiment, to make a mistake, and continue to search. So far, what have we done? We've discussed imagination in the context of interpersonal relationships. We've discussed imagination in the context of creativity and discovery. But now we come to what it actually makes this a very relevant topic in spiritual life, namely imagination and transformation. Imagination in the hands of creative genius has produced certainly wonderful works of art. But there is an even more wondrous work of art already here, namely the human being. Mahatma Gandhi spoke of the human being as both a sculptor and a sculpture. We ourselves are the work of art that we are fashioning. By holding on to a high ideal, the whole being can be sculpted into its image. Imagination, thus, has the power to transform the human being. And this transformation is the essence of religion. Swami Vivekananda says, religion is the whole soul becoming changed into what it believes. Transformation. In the Ramayana, we find the story of the great Shabari, as a young girl living in the forest, hears about the coming of Rama, how day after day she imagines how she will talk to him and feed him and serve him when he comes. And her whole life is spent in this way, with that miraculous faith, imagining how she will serve this incarnation of God. Until one day in her old age, and after she had already gone blind, Rama does indeed come to her ashram. But her lifelong imagination had by that time already transformed her into a saint. Mahendranath put the M or M. How many times he has meditated on every scene of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Through meditation and imagination, even we can have the company of the greatest thinkers, the greatest artists, poets, scientists, sages. We can establish with them a personal relationship of student and teacher. And through that relationship, we can understand their life and their teachings, and we can benefit by it to the point of transforming ourselves. Now, in discussing creativity, we said sometimes one has to put knowledge and reason aside in order to allow imagination to flourish. In transformation, two other factors have to be taken note of. As we said, some of our imaginings may need to be altered because they exert a negative influence on us. In this case, we can take the help of knowledge and reason to break that or weaken that imagining. Or we may invoke a higher or more powerful imagination to eclipse this one. Both of these are important tools in the process of transformation. Now, the use of imagination as a tool in transformation has been exhibited at an extraordinary level in the life and teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. He obviously knew the efficacy of imagination, and he used it extensively. Sri Ramakrishna's use of images and imagination to appeal directly to a level of understanding beyond knowledge is evident to anybody who studies the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Indeed, you're struck by the number of powerful images that leap out of the page, as it were. For example, I did the following exercise, and you can do it too. The second meeting with M, second time that M meets Sri Ramakrishna, it's just 2-3 pages in the Gospel. The Master uses no fewer than 14 images to make his point in spiritual practice and the realization of God. I would say it is a very fruitful exercise when you study the Gospel to keep track of the way Sri Ramakrishna uses the images. In fact, I made a list of them. He starts by saying, M says, "Sir, suppose one believes in God with form. Certainly he is not the clay image." Immediately Sri Ramakrishna says, "Why clay? It is an image of spirit." Image number 1. Then he says, image number 2. He alone teaches who has created this universe, who has made the sun and the moon, men and beasts, who has given children parents and endowed them with love to bring them up. It's image number 2. Image number 3. The mother cooks different dishes to suit the stomachs of her different children, to suit their different tastes and powers of digestion. This is in relation to the idea of the various forms of God appealing to different spiritual aspects. Image number 4. When a tree is young, it should be fenced all around, otherwise it may be destroyed by cattle. This is for the need of meditation in solitude. Image number 5. A maidservant in the house of a rich man performs all the household duties and brings up the master's children, but she knows nothing belongs to her and her home is elsewhere. This is about the need for engagement in the world and doing one's responsibility, but being detached. Image number 6. The tortoise moves about in the water, but her thoughts are on the bank where her eggs are lying. This is about keeping your mind on God while engaging yourself in duties. Image number 7. First rub your hands with oil and then break open the jackfruit. Otherwise they will be smeared with the sticky milk. First secure the oil of divine love and then set your hands to the duties of the world. Number 8. To get butter from milk, you must let it set into curd undisturbed, then churn it to get the butter. This is about the need to go into solitude, to contemplate, to attain divine love. Number 9. The world is water and the mind is milk. If you mix them, it will be very hard to separate them. But if you turn the milk into butter, it will float. This is about practicing spiritual discipline in solitude to get the butter of knowledge and love. And then once you've practiced that, once you practice some spiritual discipline, you have no fear about mixing in the world. Because just as the butter floats on the water, so also your mind will retain its integrity. Image number 10. People shed a whole jug of tears for wife and children. They swim in tears for money. But who weeps for God? Number 11. O mind, if you are in earnest, this is a song you are singing. Bring her an offering of bell leaves and hibiscus flowers, and with it mingle the sandal taste of love. Image number 12. Longing is like the rosy dawn. After the dawn, out comes the sun. Longing is followed by the vision of God. Image number 13. The point is that one has to love God even as the mother loves her child, the chaste wife her husband, and the worldly man his wealth. Image number 14. Pray with a longing heart. The kitten knows only how to call its mother mew mew. It remains satisfied wherever the mother puts it. 14 images. You see, how can anybody who read this say they have difficulty in meditation? You're not being asked to meditate on something abstruse, undefinable, and neither are we asking you to grapple with the mind as it is. These are 14 pictures. So Sri Ramakrishna heavily relies on the use of images in spiritual life, in meditation. The idea is that you can hold these images, they're fairly easy to hold, and through holding the image, you get to transformation. You also know other images. In fact, now this is a way of studying the Karamita. Try to look for these images. You know the picture of the salt doll. What an interesting idea, salt doll, a doll made of salt. Have you heard of that? This doll was made of salt and it could walk and talk too. So it went and it had a brain. It wanted to know how deep the ocean is. So it asked that, but it went to measure it itself. It wouldn't rely on anyone else's testimony. So it went to the ocean to measure the depth of the ocean, but of course once it entered the ocean, it melted. What kind of story is that? It's a very graphic story on which you can meditate. You see? Then there's the ambitious ant. The story of the ambitious ant. It came across a pile of sugar. It took one grain, could barely carry it back to its whole end, but in its mind, this ant had a mind. It was thinking, I'll come back and take the whole pile of sugar. So he wants to say the divine, the spiritual truth is vast and infinite, and we are like ants. one grain of sugar is enough to satisfy us, but we think that we will take the whole thing. Point is that it is understandable, perhaps excusable, if you say, I have difficulty understanding the Brahma Sutras. I have difficulty reading the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. But what difficulty is there in understanding this? This is, you see, makes spiritual life like a child can follow. So to derive the benefit of transformation from such images, it's not enough to listen to them and be amused by it. It is necessary to ruminate over them, to internalize them. And this is the process of meditation. Meditation itself is the greatest exercise of imagination. It is an attempt to transform oneself in the light of a higher ideal. And this higher ideal has to be projected onto our awareness with the help of familiar and suggestive images. Somebody said to Swami Vivekananda when he said this, you are just hypnotizing yourself. You know, what you call meditation, you're just hypnotizing yourself. No, he said, I'm not hypnotizing myself, I'm de-hypnotizing myself. This is the hypnotism now, to think that this is what I am. Actually, what I'm trying to do is de-hypnotize myself. Anyway, we see that many images in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and in the scriptures of the world, not just in the Quran. They give us images to meditate on. Raj Yoga, Patanjali says, one may meditate on the effulgent light which is beyond all sorrow. What an image. The effulgent light which is beyond all sorrow. Or he says, you could meditate on the heart that has given up all attachment to sense objects. Think of somebody who you know who's a little detached, and meditate on their heart. Heart of a noble person who's given up attachment. Vivekananda adds, take some holy person, some great person whom you revere, some saint, someone whom you know to be perfectly non-attached, and think of his heart. That heart has become non-attached, and meditate on that heart. At the very least, it will calm your mind. Swami Vivekananda again says, some imagination helps to break the bondage of other imagination. The whole universe is imagination. But one set of imaginations will cure another set. Those that tell us that there is sin and sorrow and death in the world are terrible. But the other set, thou art holy, there is God, there is no pain. These are good and help us to break the bondage of the others. The highest imagination that can break all the links of the chain is that of the personal God. Now, one question that may arise in this regard is whether we're fooling ourselves. As the person said, you're just hypnotizing yourself. This is imagination, it's not real. Are we just exercising wishful thinking? This leads us directly to the question of what is real. In fact, this is why Plato had actually a lot of disregard for imagination. He didn't think it reflected reality. But actually, what is real? We started off by talking about the subjective nature of perception. You don't see what there is, you see what you think it is. The mind doctors whatever you're seeing, whatever the eyes are delivering to it. There is, this is sort of subject for discussion on its own right, there is as much information being sent from the brain to the eye as from the eye to the brain. Why is that? And there are experiments that show how psychologists are good at this. They can show you two squares, they're exactly the same shape, the same color. And they'll put them in two different contexts and you'll swear to it that they are different. The same object, same color, appears different to you in different contexts. Why? It's the brain which is interpreting. So when we say, what is real, the real world, what exactly is real? Some people can walk on coals, red hot coals, and they're not burnt. What's real? On the other hand, we're not denying the reality of natural laws. They do operate. If you jump off a cliff, can imagination prevent your fall? I don't want to test it. But the philosophy behind this is that only that which we absolutely believe to be true can affect us. And there are innumerable instances in the scriptures of the world of the power of belief in determining what is real. In the Gospel according to St. Matthew, it is said, and all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. If ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. When Christ cured the blind and the lepers, he said to them, if you believe that you are cured, so shall you be. Thy faith has made thee whole. Now we have to remember that we don't see things as they are, but as we think they are. Our concept of what is real and what is unreal is largely a matter of our mental conditioning. What we call reasoning is also largely a matter of conditioning because it is based on assumptions. The power of imagination is that it can cut through these assumptions and explore new possibilities. Swami Vivekananda would certainly have encouraged us to explore those possibilities. In a letter to his brother disciple, he writes about the power of imagination in maintaining good health. This is his quotation. Now, I tell you a curious fact. Whenever any one of you is sick, he's talking to his brother disciples. Whenever any one of you is sick, let him himself or any one of you visualize him in your mind and mentally say and strongly imagine that he is all right. That will cure him quickly. You can do it even without his knowledge and even with thousands of miles between you. Remember it and do not be ill anymore. In another letter, dated just a few months later, he wrote, who says you are ill? What is disease to you? Brush it aside. Thou art energy. Impart energy unto me. Thou art strength. Impart strength unto me. Thou art spirituality. Impart spirituality unto me. Thou art fortitude. Impart fortitude unto me. Repeat to yourself that such and such are Atma, that they are infinite, and how can they have any disease? Repeat this an hour or so on a few successive days, and all disease and trouble will vanish into naught. In his lecture on thought, imagination, meditation, an excerpt of which we heard at the beginning, he says, the same faculty that we employ in dreams and thoughts, namely imagination, will also be the means by which we arrive at truth. When the imagination is very powerful, the object becomes visualized. Therefore, by it we can bring our bodies to any state of health or disease. There is only one power to cure the body, that is in every man. Medicine only rouses this power. Disease is only the manifest struggle of that power to throw off the poison which has entered the body. Although the power to overthrow poison may be roused by medicine, it may be more permanently roused by the force of thought. Finally, he adds as general advice, stamp out the negative spirit as if it were a pestilence, and it will conduce to your welfare in every way. No negative, all positive, affirmative. I am, God is, everything is in me, I will manifest health, purity, knowledge, whatever I want. Thus, imagination frees our creative power and allows us to formulate new paradigms for our own existence and nature, for that of the world, for that of our concept of God. Now, I'll leave you with one final thought, even though we're over time. If our paradigms are compared to maps, you remember in the example of Stephen Covey, we talked about the paradigms as maps. What is the territory they are mapping? In other words, what is the underlying reality? Well, Vedanta says clearly and unequivocally, it is the spiritual being, Brahman, or less accurately, God. The Isha Upanishad begins with the amazing statement, whatever exists in this world, even in the very minutest portion, is the Supreme Being. We had said that imagination is the discovery of connections between things that are apparently disconnected. Thus, the grandest imagination of all is something that can unify or connect everything that is. All that is, the living, the non-living, the physical, the mental, the manifest, the unmanifest, all that we can conceive of and even what we cannot conceive of. So grand is this speculation, one may imagine, if you were a poet, you may imagine that the heart of the universe missed a beat, as it were, when the student Shaunaka walked up to his teacher Angiras and asked him, "Sir, which is that thing which, having been known, all this becomes known?" And Swami Vivekananda explains, what existed was the Lord Himself. It is He who is in the child, in the wife, in the husband. It is He who is in the good and in the bad. He is in the sin and in the sinner. He is in life and in death. The whole world is full of the Lord. Open your eyes and see Him. This is what Vedanta teaches. Give up the world which you have conjectured, because your conjecture was based upon a very partial experience, upon very poor reasoning, and upon your own weakness. In his own words, Vivekananda says, if we discover that there is one unity running through all these developments, spiritual, moral, and social, we shall find that religion, in the fullest sense of this word, must come into society and into our everyday life. In the light of Vedanta, you will understand that all sciences are but manifestations of religion, and so is everything else that exists in this world. The power of imagination is that it can bring us to that point of realization.